We have shifted from showing you latest edge, not only vision, strategy, and technologies. Now we're moving into talking about real-life examples. We had Barmer before. Now we are going to have an interesting panel coming up, and it's very much about broadening the perspective. Generative AI is something we have been talking about the whole day, but it has already started impacting millions of people's lives. It has started to disrupt industries already. But now, when we look at what's happening here within the European Union, it's slightly different. Here in the EU, we have different opportunities and different challenges. And in the upcoming thought leadership panel, we have a couple of leaders joining us here from Atos and AWS, going to talk about how responsibly and strategically we can explore and exploit much more of the potential we have at hand with generative AI coming up. So I would like to invite on stage our distinguished panel with Paul, Mehmet, and Arsalan. Please join me. Thank you. Yes, gentlemen.
Thank you. Please. Okay, this works. Good. So let's start with a quick round of introduction. Paul, tell us about your role and responsibilities, also about Atos, and what Atos is doing with the focus on Europe.
Sure. Hello, everybody, and Grüß Gott München. I heard it has to be done. My name is Paul Leer. I'm the sales director for Atos. For those who don't know us, we're a large system integrator, managed services provider in Europe. And we're focusing quite a lot on how to turn cloud, data, and AI into business value, especially in Europe, how you do that in a digital sovereign way. And that's where most of my time is being spent on.
Thank you. Mehmet?
Yeah, I'm Mehmet, and I'm a principal architect at AWS. I'm actually based out of the UK, but I work across our global software partners. So these are partners that typically originate in the US, but also in Europe, but work globally. And I primarily focus on strategic initiatives with these partners that help them grow across the globe. So as an example, we are launching the European Sovereign Cloud end of this year. So that's one area which I'm working on. And then the other one is getting our partners to adopt GenAI and increasingly agentic AI these days.
Thank you. Thank you. So Mehmet, I would like to start with you. As you are helping organizations in Europe to scale GenAI adoption, what kind of barriers, what kind of challenges you are seeing as part of this adoption?
Yeah, I think what we can do is we can put customers into two buckets. So one is high maturity companies who have implemented AI, and perhaps they've even put some use cases into production. So with these types of customers, they are struggling to scale GenAI across their organizations. And we can probably say there are a couple of reasons for this. Number one is ability to securely and safely operationalize GenAI across their organizations. And that's primarily because if you were to open up these tools to everyone in your organization, there's a lot of concerns around, for example, sensitive data loss. And then the second area is a lot of the kind of proof of concepts or use cases which they have implemented tend to be by their internal IT teams or perhaps bringing in a consultancy to kind of do a very bespoke GenAI implementation. But when we look at studies around how GenAI is going to scale, it's going to be really through GenAI being embedded into existing applications and software. And that, of course, does take some time, but we are, I think, at an inflection point where we are seeing software partners like Hyland who are already doing this. So these types of customers can adopt those software and essentially inherently scale GenAI across their organization. And then if we look at low maturity customers, these are customers who have been dabbling in GenAI, but they are really struggling to find an impactful use case and also deriving value from GenAI, so measuring what the impact of that is. And of course, coupled with that is like skills shortages. But for these types of partners, I think the main lesson learned is it's actually very similar to every technology in that they've kind of approached GenAI from a technical project perspective as opposed to trying to solve a business problem. So for them, it's really about identifying a business problem that is GenAI shaped and then using GenAI to solve that.
I like what you just said, that I mean, if the project is an innovation theater, not tied with the mission critical or business critical processes, the outcome is known right in the beginning. But Paul, would you like to add your perspective on the challenges or the barriers that you see while organizations are adopting GenAI here in Europe?
Sure, I think a lot of has been said already, quite good. But what I see when I help my clients quite a lot is one, you touched upon it, is skill gap. AI, GenAI requires a lot of new skills of people on how do you do analytics, how do you do compliant, ethical AI, how do you ensure that that's going to happen? And I see a lot of companies struggle, if they are not mature or not mature. If you really want to scale it, skills gap is difficult. Second is, we talked a little bit about compliancy. In Europe, there's a lot of regulation, and I think it's unfortunately a bit of a moving target. There is the NIS2, the EU AI Act, there is GDPR. In the Netherlands, you have BO or BO2 that's coming up. And how do you really ensure that your GenAI is compliant by design right from the start? And I see a lot of companies struggle just making that happen. And then thirdly, yes, if you do it, in our pilots, like you say, embedded in your core processes, but can you really reimagine your process? So I see a lot of use cases that work really well. We saw a nice demo of IDP. I think it was an awesome demo, how it can use AI to really, ingest all those documents. And I see a lot of clients doing those similar kind of things, very task focused. But can you use GenAI to really reimagine your whole process on how you do things and how work and value is created? And I think that's, if you don't have the skills and you don't know how to do compliant by design, it's really hard to get to that level.
Compliance by design.
Yes.
Skills shortage and the ever-changing regulatory landscape, I can understand. You touch upon those use cases.
Yes.
What are the most common use cases that you see working with the European organizations when it comes to AI?
To be honest, a lot of them are still task-based, simple-based things, very concrete, automation of ingestion of documents, in finance, doing fraud detection kind of thing. So very tailored, small kind of use cases that actually have great results. So they result into smaller processing times, higher accuracy. And also, that's also what I find really great, is things like we measure job satisfaction, and we see if you apply GenAI, we see higher job satisfaction also happening. So it's we see some use cases, and there are some tailored ones. So for example, we helped a air parts manufacturing company in Denmark. They have about 6 million offers, the RFPs they get in every year. But you have to understand, if you want to buy a airplane part, how that works in that industry is that, yes, you do that via an ERP, yes, you do that via an email, but it can also be like a photo of someone pointing to something in a airplane engine. And we were able to capture that, to really capture that all and automate it with GenAI. And that's, and I think there's a lot of those use cases that really scale.
That's an interesting use case that you mentioned with the large aircraft manufacturer. I'd like to come to that job satisfaction, but later on.
Yeah.
Mehmet, are you seeing the same use cases, or what use cases from an AWS perspective you are seeing which are widely adopted or customers are looking for?
So from a functional perspective, so there are a few different use cases. So for example, summarization. So if we take, let's say, in a healthcare setting where there's a lot of patient records, perhaps images, appointment notes, and when a doctor, let's say, needs to meet with their patient, they typically need to get a summary of this. So that's a great example where you can use GenAI for such a simple task. Document processing is another one where you do claims management, but also, let's say, in a public sector setting where they get a lot of letters, you initially use GenAI to classify and then perhaps take action on the back of it. And then You also have use cases around, of course, software development. So a lot of our partners are very successfully adopting GenAI to improve software development. And then, of course, workflow automation as well. But what we are seeing, especially in this past year, is partners like Hyland and other software partners who are embedding GenAI into their platforms. And right now, what we are seeing is probably a lot of these use cases, I would say, are at the simple end of the spectrum. But we are really, in the next couple of years, probably getting to these more complex workflows that will be automated with GenAI. So, if we think about a piece of software, today it is developed with a human user in mind. But with GenAI, that's going to change in that the software or the SaaS application is going to be developed in a way such that an AI agent can use that as a tool. And you can kind of think about a scenario where there is a human-facing agent that is using these various different SaaS applications, which are essentially AI agents, to accomplish a more complex task. So I believe in the next couple of years, we'll be seeing examples like that coming.
So starting with simple, mundane, repetitive tasks, and then of course the sky's the limit. You talked about AI agents, you talked about job satisfaction. I would like to pick both of your brains, whether you see, how you see the adoption. Is there a fear when it comes to the stakeholders' confidence or the job transformation with the AI, or you see the willingness everywhere when it comes to AI adoption in those use cases? Paul, I'll start you from.
To be honest, there's a lot of fear on how to apply AI. That's, I think, just the reality. It's both from stakeholders, especially in regulated industries, in public sector or FSI. There's a lot of, okay, how auditable is this? And do you really understand how you do your data lineage? And how does the model then come to its conclusion? And can you prove that? So that's really, I think you can if you do it correctly. But there's a lot of mistrust or fear about doing that. But also from the people side, people are afraid of losing their jobs. I think that's, a common theme. So we really try to show that like this morning there was a nice quote of AI will help you automate the mundane so that we can spend more time with each other. And I think that's really how we always try to bring that in and show that the job that stays or the job that is then transformed is more fun and more fulfilling for the people in that process itself. And that's not true for everybody, but it's true for most, to be honest, that it will be more fun and it will be more fulfilling and that they can add more value. And so it's a change management aspect that you really have to take serious in any AI implementation.
All right. And Mehmet, are you seeing the same fear, same concerns? And if yes, how are you tackling that from an AWS perspective?
So I think there is definitely fear in people, but I do like this one quote by a Harvard business professor where he says, AI is not going to replace humans, but rather humans with AI will be replacing humans without AI. And I think probably the same can be said about companies as well. So companies that adopt AI and become AI companies will be replacing those who don't. So while there is, of course, a shift and an efficiency that we get from GenAI, also there is the possibility of creating new revenue streams, perhaps new products, like this example I gave where a SaaS platform is not just built for humans, but also for an AI agent, and that can be a completely new revenue stream. So I think like there is real benefit in not just implementing isolated GenAI use cases, but really looking at it as a transformation program. And we are seeing a lot of companies who are appointing chief AI officers and creating a program around how do we transform our company from where we are today to becoming an AI-powered company.
It's all about the mindset, it's all about the transformation. I have to switch gears looking at the time. EU sovereignty, a key topic.
Yes.
Everyone is talking about it. Mehmet, from an AWS perspective, what concrete steps are you taking to ensure secure, ethical, and sovereign AI cloud?
Yeah, so first of all, with sovereignty, there is not a globally accepted definition of what it is. So you'll see different countries, different companies, sectors, and even cloud providers defining sovereignty differently. But to ground ourselves at AWS, the way we define it is there is two pillars. Number one is data sovereignty, and number two is operational sovereignty. So if we look at data sovereignty, this is to do with where are you storing your data, who can access it, how do you encrypt it, operator access restrictions. So everything to do with making sure your data remains sovereign. And then operational sovereignty is, it includes themes such as survivability and resilience. So let's say in the context of a geopolitical conflict, can you continue to operate? So if someone cuts the underwater cables, can you continue to operate? And who is operating this cloud? Is it local people, or is it people who are globally located? So these two concepts together, data sovereignty and operational sovereignty, make up digital sovereignty. Now, if we look at AWS, there are probably a few different areas where we offer or help customers meet sovereignty requirements. So first of all, it's infrastructure. In Europe, currently, we have 8 regions or data centers. One of them, as you may know, is in Frankfurt. And of course, when you use these regions, all of your customer data stays in that region where you store it. But also you inherit a lot of benefits of using the cloud, such as security, compliance, encryption methods. So for a lot of customers in commercial space, it's perfect, and in public sector, it's perfectly fine to use those regions. But in addition to that, we are also launching a European sovereign cloud. And that's going to be launching end of this year. So that's just a few months away. And the European Sovereign Cloud will have a couple of key differences from our commercial public cloud offerings. So first of all, just like the commercial regions, all of your data, of course, remains there. But in addition to that, we are going to build a control plane which will be in the EU, such that things such as like your billing data also will remain in the EU. And the first region within the European Sovereign Cloud is actually going to be in Germany. It's going to be in Brandenburg. And the second difference of that region is that it's going to be operated by local staff. And what we mean by that is that our initial announcement was that it was going to be EU residents. But since then, working with regulators and customers and partners, we've actually realized that it needs to be more strict. So it's actually going to be operated eventually by just EU citizens. And then the third change, the third future of that region is that we are creating an EU entity. So, and the managing director of that EU entity will be a German citizen, an EU citizen. So what we typically tell our customers is that if you have more kind of highly regulated workloads, then you can look at using that European sovereign cloud that we are building. But with GenAI, there is an additional complexity when it comes to sovereignty, because where you store your data is one thing, but then a lot of these models are actually being developed by companies that are in other countries. And if you are using these for, let's say, more regulated workloads, then how do you trust the response that that model is giving? How do you make sure that that's not against your sovereignty? So one of the beliefs we have had at AWS since the rise of GenAI is that there is not going to be a single model that will be suitable for every workload. So depending on your use case, your budget, your performance requirements, you need to choose the right model. And so sovereignty is similar. So through our service Bedrock, we provide access to foundation models, not just from AWS, but also from third parties. And so one of those is Mistral, which is a French company, an EU company. And there's a range of open source models as well that we give access to. And then the final and third point where we are helping our customers is, as you may know, the EU AI Act, it defines AI systems, it puts them into different risk categories from, ones that are unacceptable to high risk to minimal risk. And the minimal risk ones are ones that we can start developing today. But the ones that, where there's a bit more risk, then you do need to demonstrate how you are going to deal with that risk, such as like maybe having a human in the loop, or perhaps having an AI governance structure in your organization. So of course, we can provide prescriptive guidance on how you can implement that, but also we do that through our partners as well.
Thank you, very insightful and very comprehensive. So Paul, from your perspective, how do you see that balance evolving between the global AI innovations that we see from all the companies versus the EU demand for digital sovereignty? What are you seeing from your customers, and what are you doing in this regard?
Yeah, so the question is very real. I get it every day from customers. How do you balance that? And I think everything you just said, I recognize from an AWS perspective. So we work with partners like AWS to make this happen, but also like with Azure. Azure has the Azure Data Vault, which is a similar kind of setup that you have with AWS. But we also work with OVH, or we have, and Atos also has a lot of data centers in Europe. And what we do often with clients is how to take this trade-off, take this balance, and how do you manage it and orchestrate it across, how you say that, where storage, compute, data is residing, basically. And we can help clients. So, for example, we have the Ministry of Justice in the Netherlands. How they want to take leverage of AI, and they want to use GenAI, but they have a lot of workloads that are hypercritical, can't leave the Netherlands, to be honest. So we run that in our own what we call them private data center in the Netherlands as a private cloud for them. But we orchestrate a lot of the other workloads in one pane for them to so that they can accelerate and shift when possible. So we help them to make that governance clear. So upfront, what's the value that you want to bring? Do the assessment with the EU AI Act, make the assessment with all the other regulations that they have to do, so that you can directly start on the right foot. And I think that's for every company. Any regulated company, you have to have that governance in place and understand what you have to do. And then there are so many technical opportunities. If you do that in a hybrid model, you can make it work.
Governance, hybrid assessments, okay, all important points. Paul, while I'm speaking with you, today we talked about the agentic enterprise, GenAI throughout the day. A lot of people sitting in this room are beginning their journey on GenAI. What is one piece of advice that you would like to share with them?
Yeah, for me, one piece of advice, start with compliance by design. So understand where your data is, where it's residing, who has access to it, and what does it mean for your company. But also understand how you do the workloads, do it private, do it public, all those kind of things. And if you have compliance by design right from the start with the right governance, you can actually accelerate, I think, because you really can drive those use cases quickly to market, and it builds trust. It builds trust for your auditors, it builds trust for your employees, it builds trust for your clients. So it's actually an accelerator for me, that compliance by design. So if you one tip, start with that in mind always.
Baked right from the beginning.
Right from the beginning.
And Mehmet, from an AWS perspective, what is the moonshot for AWS for GenAI, if I will look at horizon like 2030 in Europe? And what needs to happen between now and then to make it happen?
Yeah, I think probably there are a few things. So first of all, in Europe, we are very respectful of an individual's right and privacy, right? So, and especially with GenAI, there's a lot of concerns around that. So one of the things that I think in Europe where we can show leadership is around creating human-centric AI that is kind of more focusing on privacy and safety. That's one area. And then the second area is, if we look at GenAI currently, it's kind of very functional, but eventually we are going to get into more industrial AI. And so in Europe, there are certainly some industries where we are very strong, right? If you look at Germany with automotive and manufacturing. So how do you take that automotive industry and make it an AI-powered industry? And likewise, healthcare is another one where I think one of the advantages we have in Europe is that it's more centralized as opposed to being scattered. So that could be an advantage in transforming it to being AI-powered. And then the third area, of course, is sovereignty in that, of course, in Europe, it's a very hot topic right now. And as I mentioned, AWS is building this European sovereign cloud. But across the globe, we are seeing that, in the Middle East, in India, in Latin America, there is this sovereignty discussion that is taking place. So Europe can also pave the way on how we can implement systems in a sovereign manner, especially sovereign AI. And in terms of what needs to happen, I think we, first of all, need to have a little bit more urgency in Europe in that, this transformation is happening. And if we don't do it now, someone else, somewhere else, will be doing this. So there's a real threat that we will be left behind. And as we discussed, there are definitely some use cases which are more low risk that we can start implementing today. But also I would suggest to customers to lean in with providers like Hyland, who are actually really transforming their platforms with agentic AI in adopting these features, but also demanding more from them, right? Working together with them to kind of turn the kind of dream of those more complex GenAI workflows into reality.
I love the point that you talked about urgency. Doing tomorrow today, that should be the motto.
I agree.
Thank you so much, Mehmet. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.